Hi guys, hope everyone's well and welcome back to the channel. So this video is going to be going over my final session of prep, which is going to be my back and hamstring session. And I'm starting prep not this week coming, so today's the Saturday, not the Monday, but the Monday after. Next week I'm spending doing a deload, which kind of makes sense. It's been a good while since I last done a deload, and as well as that, it makes sense rather than maybe getting into a dieting phase, trying to retain muscle and then performing a deload, because you want to be providing yourself with that adequate stimulus in order to retain muscle tissue. So I'm not going to talk too much right now. I'm going to jump into this session just because I want to train. I'll try and document as much as I can. It's quite busy today in the gym by the looks of it, but hopefully it will die down in a bit. But hope you enjoy. Any questions, just leave them in the comments, and I appreciate everyone's support in advance. So first up, as you would have seen, I've got the lat pull down, and here my grip's semi-supinated to encourage me to keep my elbows tucked into my side to target the lats. Something I've not touched on that's valuable when you're trying to target your lats during a pull down. What you want to do is, you don't want to be directly overhead. You don't really target your lats very well. A good way to assess kind of what position to be in is if you keep your palms up, put them as overhead as you can while maintaining your palms up. That's the position you ideally want to be in. You don't want to be any further overhead than that. And that's why you see these single arm pull downs on benches, and that's why they've got value, because you're not directly overhead in a position where you're not going to target your lats well. So to kind of achieve that on the pull down, what I'm doing is just simply leaning my torso back, and that means when I'm at the top position, I'm not directly overhead. I'm still in a good position to keep that load on my lats throughout. So 2 sets there, 1 8 to 10, 1 10 to 12, and then onto a dead stop barbell row afterwards. So if you've watched any of my back and hamstring videos in the past, you'd notice I used to perform in RDL. This week I'm doing a dead stop row. Reason being is I've been kind of suffering and trying to manage some lower back issues, and RDLs are just kind of aggravating it. It's very minor, but it's still just enough to kind of keep that issue ticking over. So I've decided to remove them this week, and I'll probably be removing them the next as well, just so I've got time for my lower back to heal, because that seems to be kind of the culprit. So fingers crossed it's better soon. With this dead stop row, I've done 100 kilos there, and I'm quite happy with how that moved. I've been doing kind of high rep sets for a good while, just because my lower back's not been feeling amazing on these dead stop rows, because I perform them on Tuesday as well. So I'm going to go for 80 and try and get 20. One, again, limit load exposure, keep my lower back a bit fresher and not aggravate it. Two, just a bit of fun. We do this because we enjoy it, and it's fun kind of going for kind of high rep sets, trying to reach certain milestones with different weights. So that's the plan there. Here, I'm not focusing on an awful lot really. It's kind of second nature now. I'm just kind of bracing, twisting the bar before I pull, and then rolling to my lower stomach really. Keeping them nice and strict to, again, limit load exposure here. So next up, I've got the low row, and you'll notice my grip here is semi-pronated, meaning my palms face down slightly throughout, and that will allow my elbows to flare a bit more, which will help me bias the upper back. The path of the machine going from like a low to high motion will also allow me to get a bit more movement of my shoulder blades, which will again encourage me to use my upper back and my traps, which all part of the upper back is the trap. So yeah, and the only downside to this machine is you'll notice when I'm performing it, I fail at the top very early and then I take it into partials, which isn't the end of the world. However, what I found is movements like that, like a dumbbell lateral raise, like that movement there, or like for example, you could take a tricep kickback. I feel like you can't progress them as well in comparison to a movement that's difficult throughout the full range. Partials is a good way to kind of overcome like a poor resistance profile of being really hard at one point and really easy at the other, but I do still think it's a bit harder to progress, it's a bit harder to track as well, because you're doing like 9 full reps and then partials after, and then like how much range are you getting on those partials, if that makes sense. So yeah, personally I prefer like a movement that's going to be like appropriately challenging for the full range, but that's kind of the best option I've got access to at the moment. But the gym's getting an extension, so hopefully there will be more equipment that I can kind of use that I wouldn't have that issue with. Next up we have the single arm row, and the benefit of this movement, or the benefit of doing this standing, I've touched on prior. When I'm performing this, you'll notice the handle travels up and then down. So if I stand back, what it basically does is instead of travelling up, it travels from being high to low, which is what we want when we're targeting the lats, because as I touched on prior, like when I've done the low row, when it's travelling from like a low to high motion, you've got a greater likelihood of kind of performing like almost a shrug, if that makes sense, getting a bit more movement in the shoulder blades, whereas this helps me kind of make it a lat pull down and encourages me to drive my elbow towards my hip, which is what you want if you're targeting your lat. And I was performing this with a handle on the machine before, like a D handle, but I wasn't getting on with it due to the influence of the handle on the machine. It didn't have as much of a drop off, meaning it didn't get light when I rode the machine, so I wasn't really getting on with it and I didn't get as much out of it, in my opinion. So next up, as you can see, we've got the lying hamstring curl, and here what you'll notice is I'm pulling myself forward and down with the handles. Something we want to think about, not just during a hamstring curl, but on any exercise, is where's the weight trying to pull us. For example, on the hamstring curl, you'll notice it's pulling me back when I'm obviously curling up, just because the way my heels are, I'm pressing against the pad, so I'm going to be wanting to be pulled this way, so my feet are going to be pulled kind of back, if that makes sense. As a result, we want to create counter forces, so a good rule to stand by is whenever a weight's pulling us in a certain direction, we want to basically resist that by bracing, using things like our hands or feet, whatever we can, or using chest supports on machines like I'm doing here. And like you've seen on the rows, I've obviously got the chest support. I'm using my hand when I was doing that stand back row, so whenever there's an opportunity to have a contact point with the machine, that's going to make you more stable, use it. It's going to help you produce more force. So these pads are there for a reason when you're using a machine, etc. So don't just kind of use the target muscle and have everything else limp. Make sure you're engaging it and make sure you're trying to create a counter force. So next up we have the single leg press, and when I'm performing this, first of all, the reason I'm performing this is having some kind of single arm / single leg work can be beneficial if you've got any imbalances, that sort of thing. As well as that, it allows you to kind of get more out of the working side because you're not having to use both sides at once, meaning you don't need to, you can recruit more muscle fibers with that working side. And when I'm performing this, what I'm focusing on is having a slight lean to the working side, and as well as that, making sure that I'm pulling down on the handle on the side I'm using in particular. And as well as that, when you're performing it, don't kind of lean forward on the seat excessively. Reason being is you're actually shortening the amount of range you can get. You're putting yourself into hip flexion. Basically, you're bending at the hips, meaning you're going to round your lower back sooner, and your knees are going to get, your chest is going to get in the way for your knees. So sit right back on the seat. Don't want to arch your back, but just have a neutral spine throughout, and you'll be able to also pull yourself down more and produce more force in doing so. So yeah, got one set each leg here. I did actually have the split squat in, but again, as I touched on, my lower back's not feeling amazing, so I'm putting this in this week just so I don't aggravate it any further. So something big when it comes to any sort of, pretty much any movement really, it's like, see when the movement starts to burn, when it gets kind of uncomfortable, don't bottle your sets, don't speed up the reps, don't drop into the hole when it gets hard. Kind of own those reps, especially at the very end. Like, the goal is to stimulate muscle growth, and you know the eccentric is beneficial for muscle growth, so cling on to it, absolutely milk that eccentric and kind of own those reps, earn the reps instead of kind of dive bombing, using passive tissues, meaning tendons, ligaments to bounce out that bottom position to then get the rep. Not only will you get more out of the movement, but your joints will also thank you in the long term. So on those reps, you'll notice when it gets hard, my eccentrics don't really slow. As uncomfortable as it is, I try to cling on them as much as I can and own them. So at this point of the session, I was about 3 hours in, so I just thought I'd kind of crack on and get the movements done. So basically voice over what I had next in the session. So I had a hip thrust here where I'm focusing on doing a 2 count pause at that top position, as that's where the value of the kind of hip thrust lies. It allows you to fully shorten the glute. What I'm basically cueing is kind of folding at the hips when I lower, so it's a hip dominant movement instead of what's happening at the legs. And also what you can focus on doing is focusing on driving your legs down instead of down and forward, and that's going to help you use your glutes further if that is what your goal is on this piece of equipment, which I recommend making your goal. And then afterwards I had a hyperextension just with 25 kilo dumbbells, just accumulating some glute and hamstring work that I potentially didn't get out of the dead stop row, because I usually do an RDL like I said. And then followed up, I done some biceps, I done some tibialis raises, which is pretty much the muscle on the front of your calf, and then followed up with some calf work. So pretty long in terms of the session length, but got to kind of get that work done. And all my sessions aren't this long, so this was I think 3 hours and 50 minutes. However, like, I can recover from it. I progress session to session, and it's, in my opinion, like, doing these kind of wee things are the marginal gains that will add up and make the difference in terms of how I'll place when the next time I'll step on stage. So for me, it's absolutely worth it. But hope you've enjoyed the video. Any questions, just leave them in the comments. Any support is greatly appreciated as always.